Welcome to This Week in Habsland. I am Jordan and he is Brian, and we are here to discuss our Montreal Canadiens. You can find us on the socials at HabslandPod. So we have a special podcast ready for you folks today. We're doing our third annual Montreal Canadiens player value rankings. So that'll be the second part of the episode, but it's going to be way more than just half the episode. It'll probably be, I would guess, 75 to 80% of the episode. But Brian, we still wanted to do at least one headline of the week, and there has been a theme that you brought up several weeks back of when we looked at the schedule for January specifically of like division match, conference match, division match. So I'll pass it over to you. What is our headline of the week?
Headline of the week has to do with the Atlantic Division, as you said. 7-horse race plus Ottawa is my headline for the week. And not only because it's fun to make fun of one of our favorite rivals, the Ottawa Senators, and how they're struggling lately, but more so it's just to show how close the Atlantic really is right now and how it's almost unprecedented. And I'll get into that after the history of it. But just to look at what the Atlantic's looking like right about now, I've just calculated very quickly the pace that all the Atlantic teams are on in terms of their final points at the end of the year after 82 games. So after 82, Tampa Bay, if they continue this pace, will be at 112, then Detroit at 105, then you've got us at 102. So those are the top three division spots. Obviously not set in stone. Things are too close. Then you've got Buffalo 97, Boston 97, Toronto 96, Florida, who's about to get maybe their most important player back at 92, and then Ottawa at 87. So that's the other reason they're kind of left out of the 7-horse race. They're the only team who's on pace for less than 90 points at the moment. But isn't that impressive? Like 112, 105, 102, then a bunch in the mid-90s, and then Ottawa. It's an incredibly close year.
So I'm glad we're starting with this angle of like, truthfully, this is impressive and really cool, and not this is annoying. The one time my team is getting really good, everyone else is doing good. I'm sure that's the sentiment in Buffalo right now. But let's focus on like what's actually happening is that Detroit is a fully competent, really well-run hockey club right now. That the Buffalo Sabres have been playing really good hockey for about 6 weeks. Meanwhile, the Tampa Bay Lightning are just flooring it and killing everyone in sight. And it's been not that quiet of a story, but that win streak just kept going and going. And I know we're making fun of Ottawa, like Tim Stützle. Sorry, but he had a nice goal there on Saturday night.
Yeah,
There's
that was
just
beautiful.
So much skill on display in this division, and it's all kind of culminating at the same moment. Even our dreaded Leafs they're doing something slowly. The Leafs are making moves. And it's been interesting through a lot of these division games that the Habs they are kind of getting away with some of these games. Like there's been a few too many actually multi-goal comebacks in the final 5-10 minutes, which they're very exciting. No one can doubt it. When you pull your goalie with 5 minutes left at a quasi home game and everyone's going bonkers the last third period and into overtime. It's not a great trend, but for now we're going to accept it and kind of move on. At least in the spirit of just enjoying like the spectacle of it, there is some concern there. But yeah, broadly speaking, we went from, and this was kind of my stance for the first 20, 30 games of the season of, hey, there's an opportunity here. And I still think there is. Like this pace is not going to, especially like the last 4 to 6 weeks, this pace will not continue for all these teams. But it's still something that you got to ride the wave a bit. I still think the Canadiens are in great position to have one of those top 3 spots. And I've talked about number 2 kind of, again, these last 20, 30 games that, hey, there's an opportunity here. I still think that's the case. Matthew Tkachuk coming back is scary. I would say that Sasha Barkov is probably the most important player.
Sure.
That they won't be seeing, but kind of right behind them in some type of weird heart and soul type of ways is Matthew Tkachuk. Listen, man, the Atlantic it's not quite the Central, though the Central is wickedly top heavy. It's looking more and more likely that you're going to have the 5 Atlantic teams getting in. I wonder if, like, 2 things have come to mind. I think we may have looked at this in years past. The best an 8th place team has ever finished in terms of their point production. Like, has there ever been an 84 point or whatever Ottawa's pace was? You said 84, 85 point pace for an 8th place team. And on the other hand, have we ever had a 6th place team in one division have more points than a 3rd place team in any other division in the same conference? That is, because I wonder if that's also going to be in play.
Those are 2 great questions. I'll be honest with you, I don't know the second one, like the proximity of 6-3. I do know the first one, though, and the pace that Ottawa is on is better than any Atlantic team has ever finished in 8th place.
Wow.
So I looked at every season. The best we've seen, Buffalo with 78 in 2016-2017. So that was the year that the Montreal Canadiens were first in the division with 103, almost 10 years ago. And so that's a 25 goal difference between the first and last place in the division. And so that's basically what we're on pace here for, Jordan, is 24.6 points apart in terms of the pace of the Tampa Bay Lightning, nearly at 112, and Ottawa just over 87. So it's not unprecedented, as I said, like it's almost reoccurring. But look, Ottawa picks it up a little bit, and Tampa Bay realizes they need to save some for the playoffs, and suddenly that shrinks to like 22. Out of curiosity, would you happen to know? You might not know it off the top of your head, but just think about it for a sec. The two lowest ever come from the same division, not the Atlantic Division, in terms of the difference between the first place and the eighth place team. And obviously, like, I'm only counting the last, since 2014, 2015. That's when these actual divisions arose. And I'm discounting the North Division of COVID, all that stuff. So Central, Atlantic, Pacific, Metropolitan. One season, there was 17 points of difference only, and the other was 19 points. Can you guess what division it was? It's the same one.
I'm going to go with the Pacific.
It is not the Pacific. Pacific had some low ones, like low to mid 20s, but the Central had 17 and 19. So in 2018, 2019, Nashville had 100 points. Minnesota had 83. Kind of amazing.
Wow.
And then even more astounding, in 2014, 2015, the Colorado Avalanche were in last with 90, and St. Louis had 109 in first.
Sorry, this is 2017-18, you said?
So 2014-15 is St. Louis over Colorado, 19 points difference. 18-19 is Nashville over Minnesota, 17 points difference. So Nashville just gets to 100 points, and Minnesota's at 83. So 17 is the lowest that it's ever been. If you look at the Atlantic, because Atlantic I actually tallied much more than the others. Those ones I just looked at the lowest. But in the Atlantic, it has the most ever, which... you're not going to love this. Boston 135 over Montreal 68. And then the very next year, Florida's 122 over Montreal 55. Both 67-point differences. So those are the most in like all of the divisions. Forget Atlantic.
Yeah. That was that historic greatest hockey team of all time, right? Those Boston Bruins. They did great things in those playoffs, right?
That they did in the playoffs. Yeah, they were just as good as the 76-77 Habs. Do we have to go over this again? 76-77 Habs absolutely trump the 23 Bruins.
So on the division stuff, so look, 2 more Buffalo games before the end of the month. I believe there's a Boston game also before the break. And then it's definitely loosening up, though. After that, I don't believe the next division game's the Leafs until the middle of March. And there's a handful in there. I mentioned a few, was it last week? I think the last Florida game is in early April. And I have that kind of circled as, hey, this will be, even if it's not for division standings, it'll be a bit of a test to see if, as the Habs are hopefully getting ready for a playoff push. So 2 more Buffalo games, and those are kind of really interesting ones. But like, do you see, so look, we said, 7-horse race. Is someone going to fall out between now and the trade deadline to make it like a bit more like the delineation we've all kind of said all season? Tampa should push away from everybody. They're trying, but 2-6, I mean, you can throw Tampa in that group, but like really 2-6 is a jumble. And right now Tampa, I think, has a few less games played as well. That makes it artificially closer. 2-6 or 2-7 is pretty darn close. Is someone going to fall off in that group?
I find it incredibly difficult to say that any one of these teams could fall off, considering they're all on close to winning streaks. Not exactly winning streaks, but like 9-0-1, 7-2-1, 8-1-1, 7-1-2. These are the last 10 games of some of these teams. So they've all been either on winning streaks, or they've won 3 or 4 in a row, lost 1, won 3 or 4 in a row. Like, they're all on something of a tear. The only team that's not included in that is Ottawa. And then I guess Florida 5-4-1 isn't that amazing, but they got Kachuk coming back, so that improves them. So I find it difficult to pick any one of these teams that's going to fall off. Maybe just to be a stickler, the Sabres. But then again, Tage Thompson might just score all 5 points. Like, he was implicated in all 5 goals against the Montreal Canadiens this week. 3 goals, 2 assists for Tage Thompson. So he put the team on his back. And since they're playing us another couple times, sneak preview of our what is it? Our mean guy of the year, our rival.
Right. Yeah, oh geez, even I'm forgetting. It's like enemy of the year, something like that.
Enemy, I don't know. One of us should remember.
It's the Tom Wilson Award. Let's be honest. That's what it should be called.
Basically.
So it's Nemesis. Sorry, I was blanking.
Nemesis
of the year.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tage Thompson, definitely in prime position. Let the record remember though that one of us said Buffalo was making the playoffs in September, and the other person laughed. We're gonna bring that tape back in April and see how it plays out.
We'll see, man. They got a shot. They definitely have a shot.
We both also said Leafs in second, so it's not like I'm not gonna run away with that. On the so I just wanted to hang a little bit longer on this, if that's okay, which might end up being a fatal flaw of this episode. These late comebacks, again, I mentioned super duper exciting. Are we worried a bit? Like it's great that like the part that I'm finding very encouraging is just the amount of goals this team scores nowadays.
Yeah.
Yes, there is the odd shutout, which is kind of weird, but it does seem the last month or so, this team is putting up 4, 5, 6, 7 goals. Like it's not too much work. They put up 6 against Ottawa on Saturday, and so that's great. Like that's how I choose to view from a positive lens. Like that's one of the biggest developments. Like they're just outscoring teams right now.
Yeah.
But they're also falling behind in a lot of these games. The Tampa comeback, not quite comeback. There was obviously the Florida comeback with the Suzuki goals. There's the one they just had here on last Saturday night in Canada/Montreal. Which, by the way, I wasn't able to be at that game. I think that was the most, just from seeing the crowd via Sportsnet, I think that's the most Habs fans I've ever seen at a Sens game. Yeah. It's usually not as bad as Leafs Sens games. Like that's usually like a 60 to 70% takeover. Whereas I find Habs Sens games in Ottawa kind of be like 30 to 40% Habs fans. It's not as big as people presume.
Okay.
Except Saturday night seemed kind of wonky. Anyways, back to the question. It's okay to worry about this, right? It's not concern trolling.
No, I think it's a completely fair thing to worry about. And I think it's probably one of the top things on the bulletin board for Martin St. Louis to try and iron out for this team. It's great to score a bunch of goals, but if the downside of that is that you're playing a somewhat open, free-flowing game, the opposition also has the opportunity to score a bunch of goals. And if you can't shut it down at the appropriate time, it's going to come back and bite you. So it's great to get a lead, but then sometimes you lose it, and that's when you got to close it up. And then more importantly, as we've been discussing, you can't rely on always catching it. Like it's that they open the game a little bit too early while it's still close. The opposition takes advantage of that, and then, okay, great, we can play an open game now, but it's only because we're down by 2-3 goals. So maybe a closed game and attacking when there's opportunities would be a better strategy. That being said, you can't argue with the results. They've been able to do it. I do worry, maybe my biggest worry is when they get into the playoffs and you don't have the benefit of the 3-on-3 overtime, which the Habs just tend to eat up. Like they're kind of perfect for 3-on-3 overtime. Lots of space, lots of time to make decisions, and a lot of fast dudes with a lot of skill that can run around. So I think it's advantage Habs in the regular season. You get to the playoffs and you manage to come back and just make it 4-4. It might be a 50-50 chance instead of the advantageous odds that you get now in the regular season.
Right. And you do also wonder with, I feel weird saying this, but guys coming back, hopefully it started happening. We've seen Caden Gooley make his return. We've seen Jake Evans make his return.
Josh Anderson was great.
Anderson
coming back. Yeah, I know he wasn't out for a crazy amount of time, but like he came out, shorthanded goal, was electric, scored another goal.
And then Kirby Dock's the other guy coming around the corner. Any moment now, it seems like he might dress up on Tuesday night. So I wonder with that, specifically having Dano Evans 3-4 in the center depth chart, maybe there's a stabilizing factor there. The second line is just going to be the Wild West. And I think it's just like, we're confident they're going to outscore the other team, but there's still going to be many goals.
Yeah.
And then we'll see other stuff. But Gooley also back stabilizes the third pairing, which sounds wild to me to say out loud. We're going to get into all these guys in a few minutes, but I think just broadly, like that's the one thing just to keep in mind. Again, they're outscoring teams on most nights. But it'd be nice. It'd be okay to have a 3-1 win every now and then, I think, for our hearts, for our blood pressure, but also just for the long-term success. Like you mentioned, there's going to be a playoff game that they're in, hopefully in April, where it's 1-0 going into the third period. Like that'll happen. Not every game's going to be 4-3 or 3-3 going into the third. There'll be a couple, but they got to learn how to get those games as well.
And chances are as we approach the playoffs, penalties stop getting called. We're not going to have a Buffalo-style game. We'll have a Vancouver-style game where there were 3 penalties, 3 minor penalties, as opposed to the Buffalo game where there were, I think, 11, something like that. So the Habs power play also helps a great deal right about now.
Okay. So with that, we'll wrap up the headline of the week, and we're going to go into, like I mentioned at the top of the episode, our 3rd annual player value rankings. So for the new listeners, for those that don't remember or skipped that episode last year because they were bored, you missed out. This is an exercise that we've done now, again, 2 years before. This is our 3rd year, where we take a look at the Montreal Canadiens franchise, and it's an idea that comes from podcaster Bill Simmons, who does this for basketball players. And you're essentially, well, we're just going to do it for the Montreal Canadiens, but ranking players in the organization, not just based on who is the best player right now, not just based on who is going to be the best player in the future. It's a combination of the two. So we're taking into account what they've done, their age, their contract, their free agency status once the contract is up, everything. Everything gets piled into one. And the idea of a player value rankings is essentially, and we can do a pretty good exercise with this, Brian. I feel like I've done this, like explained it in years past, I think kind of clunky. Here's a new version of it. Noah Dobson, Philip Danault. Now we all know Noah Dobson's a better player, but theoretically, if these guys were to be traded for, what would their value be? And we have very clear indications for both these guys. Right. Phil Danault was worth a 2nd round pick. Noah Dobson was worth 2 first round picks and Emil Heineman, right? So that kind of gives you, so when we're going to do this list, obviously, Noah Dobson's going to be significantly higher up than Phil Danault. Zach Bolduc was also traded for this year. He's going to feature on this list, of course. He was traded for Logan Mailloux. Where would we figure that would be? Probably a little bit above Phil Danault. It's probably worth a little bit more than a 2nd round pick, but certainly below that of Noah Dobson. Now, who is the better player right now between Danault and Bolduc? Maybe you can have a debate with that, but we're taking into account everything. Age, contract. There's RFA years still on the table for Zach Bolduc. And there's obviously, he's 22 years old, lots of runway still. So that all kind of gets meshed in. Obviously prospects, guys who haven't even signed entry level deals are going to be eligible. The Val players are going to be here, and on and on and on. So we have 7 tiers. And I will say, I don't usually do this. I usually like putting all my notes into a Word document. But for once, I have a little legal doc. So if people hear me flipping through pages, it's because I wanted to try to keep my ideas concise on some of these guys and really just write a few words. And I find when I can type it all out, I write too much. So here's the hoping for brevity, but I highly doubt it. It's a top 35. The reason for 35 is that's just kind of where I stopped 2 years ago, and that's just what we're going to go with because it's become tradition. It's in 7 tiers, I will say. Guys from last year that are no longer on the list because they're not on the team anymore. Emil Heineman, Logan Mailloux mentioned, Yoel Armia, David Savard. Christian Dvorak wasn't even on this list last year, so he doesn't count. Before we get into the top 35, so again, it's 7 tiers. There's the guys that just missed the cut. I don't even know if the word honorable mention is worth it. But I think it's probably important, Brian, to kind of start with, well, who kind of got booted from the list that's still part of the organization? So I think the big names here, maybe, you know what? Maybe we can start with Philip Michar, because he is a guy who was 2 years ago 19th, last year 24th, and I think I'm done. I think I pulled the plug. He's out. I don't even think he was the first cut. Truthfully, I think the first cut was Sean Farrell, who is having a good year in Laval. Nothing flashy, but a good year. But yeah, Michar, first round pick, D+4 right now. Not much going on. Other cuts, just so people know, like they just were on this list last year, kind of at the tail end, but Yevgeny Volokhin got bumped. That's a tough one. Him and Farrell actually are kind of neck and neck. Owen Protatos Koivu got the boot. Nothing, haven't really been moved there. Jared Davidson's the other guy who was 35th last year. Wanted to give him a shout. Anyone else, Brian, that you were a bit surprised? I should mention, this is my list. Brian has 0 input on this list. He does see it ahead of time, so these aren't surprises. Yeah. But I don't let Brian have any input on this. Not because I don't want him to, because I need Brian to be reactionary to it. So, thoughts on the guys who aren't on this list or who fell off this list?
So, to let me be reactionary, Volokhin, you're correct. That is the one that's like, man, would have liked to see him on it. He's young. He's a goaltender. There is lots of time. I'm not worried about that one. Jared Davidson is the other one where I'm like, oh man, I just like his game. That's one that he just speaks to my heart, the way Gallagher speaks to my heart. Is it the most effective every night? Not necessarily. Is he working his absolute ass off? 100%. So those are the two. The name Koivu always makes you want to get excited that he's going to be something special. But other than that shot, we haven't seen that much develop yet. Again, still very young, 19 years old, so lots of time. So with these guys, I think it's okay. We've spent a decent amount of time in the past talking about them, and if they ever resurface, I think that's when we'll talk about them again, because I do think your 7th tier is pretty all-encompassing. I don't think anybody in this tier should have fallen off for any of the guys you just mentioned. So unless you had more on the dudes that missed, I say we jump in.
Not really. Like Protson, Thorpe, Koivu, those are guys that are 24 draft picks. They just haven't shown enough yet, so they got bumped. Luke Tuck's the other guy that I think I just overreacted to in the first half of last season, and I had him 26th, so he's also completely off this list now.
I don't know about overreacted. Give yourself some credit. Like he looked like there were going to be these flashes, and if he wasn't expiring, then maybe there would be another, you know what I mean? There's also that thing of like, how do we fit him in? So, and that's going to come up a bunch in this discussion too, is what does the future hold for this player, considering that they're expiring, or considering they have 2 years left, or the contract's a factor too.
Right. Okay. So we can hop into tier 7. We can always make our way back and see if Farrell and Volokin, if those seem like the first 2 cuts, if there's any room in here. But let's go to tier 7, which I've named the waiting room. So in reverse order, from this is grouped 30 to 35, ranked 30 to 35. In reverse order, number 35, LJ Mooney, 34, Hayden Popanekis, 33, Philip Eriksson, 32, Bryce Pickford, 31, Joshua, and number 30, rounding out the group, Vincent's Roar. Brian, first thoughts?
First thoughts. So you called it the waiting room. I feel bad for Joshua. He was in the waiting room. Doctor goes, all right, come on in. He goes in, and doctor does what he has to do, puts his glove on, goes, turn your head and cough. And right as he's about to turn his head and cough, actually go wait in that room again. Okay. Okay, we'll have you back, Joshua. Come back in. Turn your head and oh, never mind. Hang on. I'm going to see another patient now. He is doing it to himself.
Yeah.
But you know, he's been here, he hasn't been here, hadn't been here, and now with the amount of skill in the top 6 here, he's not a bottom 6 player. So where's the space?
You know what it is? It is like a doctor's waiting room, and I had 2 other names for this tier that I'll get into in a second. It's, you know, when you have like a urgent care or like day clinic, when you just have like a cold and you need antibiotics, you go there and you see the waiting room is like it's stacked, it's full. You go there, you fill out your thing, and you hear your name called in those first 15 minutes, and you're like, wow, am I going to be this lucky? And it's just the nurse to kind of just do the first initial assessment, and then they boot you back out for another hour.
Yeah.
That's what's happened to Joshua.
Yeah.
So
yep, very well said.
Yeah, so yeah, he's barely hanging on. There's still another, I think that he has to actually get a new contract this year. I believe he'd still be waiver exempt. So there's still some space there, but at the end of the day, he had an okay run. I think he might still get a shot here. They're both guys coming back from injury. It's going to get less and less. He's dropped 10 spots. It's not the biggest drop in this list, but yeah, he's fallen a bit. On some of the other guys, so Vincent's Roar and Bryce Pickford, I find is a really interesting discussion. So Leroy's sandwich in between them. Roar is 30, Pickford is 32. Despite the fact that Roar's a 22 draft pick and Pickford's a 25 draft pick, there's only 18 months between them, because Roar is a very, very young 22 draftee and Pickford was drafted a year late. Now, Bryce Pickford, the man is potentially going to score 40, 45 goals as a defenseman in the WHL. I would presume he's not going to be an overager next year, and they're just going to ship him off to Laval. At this point, I'm feeling much, much more confident than I was maybe in the summer that there's an NHL career here. I don't know, like, is it like 200-300 games? Is it like slightly better? Somewhere between like Yannick Weber and Mark Streit, something like that. Like, he's a righty, so there's stuff there. It's fine in terms of like his size is okay. It's not a detriment like it might be to LJ Mooney, but there's something there to the point where the Habs have signed him already to the ELC.
Yeah.
So they've already said, yeah, we've seen enough, man. Like, you're good to go. Like, that's actually, there's probably no way he'll do the overager stuff at that point. So that's good, but I did have him below Roar because what I saw from Vincent's Roar in training camp was kind of a, oh, hey, something's happening here. And he has the same Oliver Kapanen deal that he had to go back to Europe. But so those are 2 guys that are interesting. Philip Eriksson's the, like, I still have stock in him. It's not as much stock as I bought on like Adam Engstrom that I had for a couple years and I'm really cashing in right now. But Eriksson's still there. He's still hovering. He's putting up really strong points in Sweden. And So he stayed in this list, right? Where guys like Owen Protz and Atos Koivu fell out of this, basically same version of this group from last year. Eriksson has held steady in this group. So we're just waiting.
Yeah.
And so just before I pass it back to you, the other alternate names I had for this tier, by the way, one was the lobby, which is you're just waiting for someone to kind of hit the elevator button to go up to the next level. And the other one, which was much less nice, was the rest of the rest. This is when tier 6 was initially called the best of the rest. And this was just the rest of the rest. It was too mean. So I went with the waiting room. It's very much like you're just sitting around the lobby in the doctor's office waiting to get that call to see, hey, it's your turn, go up. But for now, this is kind of the group. Anything else on some of these guys?
Not on any specific guy, but I think the way it's organized is kind of interesting. LJ Mooney, Bryce Pickford, even Roar to an extent, but less so. But Pickford, Mooney especially, like dynamic offensive players. Then you look at like Eriksson, Papanekis, Joshua Roy, I think at his ceiling is a Mooney, type. But and then Roar is more kind of conservative. So it's interesting. It's an eclectic group of prospects here. Some who have gotten a chance in Roy and a lot who haven't. And I'm very excited. And in the case of Mooney and Pickford, it's two dudes that if they hit, so this is incredibly high ceiling stuff. If they hit, suddenly they shoot up to like the 12 to 15 region, because if they're not going to be in a bottom role. They just like their careers won't allow for it. Mooney's size won't allow for it, but his skill will allow for a top 6. So if he gets there, suddenly he's got tons of value. So you're kind of rolling the dice on those guys. Whereas I think if Eriksson, if Papanekis hit, those are bottom 6 forwards that will help your team in a big way, but maybe they only jump up into like the 20 range.
Yeah, like Papanekis is a 6'5" center. So even though he's a third line center in the WHL, we're going to hold stock in that guy and let him develop and see if any offense pops out of him and you get a fourth line center out of him. It's just, again, 6'5" center. I don't know if I give up on that soon. It's also, who knows? We'll see. Again, like this whole like tier 7, really, if I didn't have an artificial cutoff, this is the like from 30 and onwards, it just goes. And I have to artificially cut somewhere.
Right.
But yeah, that's this group.
Yeah.
Okay. Tier 6. Tier 6 titled TBH IDK. Honestly, this whole group is a shoulder shrug. 25 to 29. We'll do it in reverse order. Making his re-entry, the first ever re-entry onto the player value rankings, Josh Anderson at 29, Arbor Jacki at 28, Jaden Struble at 27, Patty Laine 26, and then just to confuse everybody, Florian Jacki. So we have 2 Jackis in this group. Florian is at the top of this group in 25. Brian, thoughts?
Yeah, we'll do our best to use their first names. I'm not going to start with them, though. I am curious about Josh Anderson, and it is absolutely recency bias, but why isn't he higher?
Wow.
I was wondering why he wasn't in the next tier. And my main argument for it is if I can spoil one guy in the next tier, same amount of money, Phil Danault at 22, Josh Anderson at 29. So in my little rundown, I sort of had them closer together. They're not right next to each other, but closer together. And so I'm curious about the Josh Anderson thing. After he's altered his game completely, I do think that he has some value here. Is this just one of those cases where, yeah, he's got some value, but too much money?
So it's interesting. Like I was when I was first putting the list together, one of the first things I thought of was Anderson has to come back because the contract is now to the point where, because he is, like you said, he's reinvented himself. It's been a year and a half now. He's still putting up averaging in probably an 80 game pace, 15 to 20 goals.
Yeah, he is.
But it's with way less important ice time on the penalty kill as well. So he made his reentry. He was 30th 2 years ago, off the list, now on 29th. And it is an interesting point that you bring up that why is he not with the group above him? I think stylistically and how I group tier 5, he fits in with that group a lot better.
Yeah.
Having said that, there are still some limitations from him, and like comparing him specifically to Danault, like Danault is still a center. Now, the offense, I'm still waiting for the offense to come back around a bit more with Danault. Like he hasn't scored in, I think I had it written down here, 51 games. He hasn't scored, I think, since March. So you'd like to see that come around. His point production is all right. But no, it's a fair point to say that specifically that there's a tier difference between Josh Anderson and kind of those everyday contributors like Phil Danault in the lower 20s. I take that fully. Settling into that role and the new the contract between the cap going up, him being in an all right spot. Having said that, like in the hypothetical world where Josh Anderson's getting traded, it could be a second round pick coming back, but I think there's salary retention too. So it's close. I take your point.
That's fair, though. That's a very good point. If ever you have to retain salary, value plummets.
Right.
You know, so like if you're talking just his value, that sort of that decreases it a little bit. His age, the fact that he would have to be re-signed to a new contract as of next year at some point. Patrick Laine is a fascinating one on this list, and then I want to get into Florian a little bit. Jaden Struble and Arbor Xhekaj, I don't know that we need to deliberate too much just because we've talked about them all year. They're the perpetual seventh. Like, one of you guys make a statement or both of you get out. That's sort of where we're at.
It's the meme where it's the guy poking the thing and say, do something.
Do something. Yes, exactly. And look, maybe it's unfair of us to ask them to do something. Maybe they're just, they don't have it in them. Xhekaj's progression is kind of similar to Joshua, 14 to 20 to 28. Yeah. So 14 in 2020, what was that? 24. Then in 2025, he was 20th and then 28th now. A part of that is just like, oh yeah, we got Ivan Demidov and you know, all these other dudes. So part of it is just that. And the trades, like Dobson came in, Carrier came in, Dano's in now. So there's that. But by the same token, it's the play of these players as well. Struble's kind of remained relatively consistent. 24th, 28th, 27th. Maybe we were looking at Xhekaj as this beacon of protecting our players more so than the skill there. So there's that. And then I want to get back to Laine, which I opened this with. Like, Laine's fascinating. You said it best maybe a month ago talking about Laine, about how he maybe has the single best individual skill. If you're talking about a single skill that one player has, his shot might be second to none in any skill that any Montreal Canadien has. And yet he's 26th.
Listen, so huge injury history. We saw how this last season ended before the injury. Like, let's put that part completely to the side because there's no criticism in there. Like, you get hurt.
Yeah.
He was falling out of favor really fast, and when everyone's going to be healthy now, I'm not entirely sure there's a spot on this team for him. So the contract's fine. It's 8.7. If you're trading him, you're retaining. So, like, you know, whatever. It's more the fact that this team, which is a 90-point-ish team, could barely find a spot for him when they were making the big push at the end of last season. And he's been hurt basically all of this season. So it's not like I've had anything new to really look at. He played only a couple games before getting injured. So yeah, he dropped. So he has a 16 spot drop. He goes from 10 down to 26.
Wow.
So I think that is up there with the biggest one. Like, Machar goes from 24th unranked. So I don't know. I'd have to check if that would actually be 16 spot drop. That's technically the biggest one, but
right.
You know, right up there, it's Patrick Laine going from 10 down to 26. It is what it is. You know, like he'll sign somewhere else next year. I don't think he's coming back, and we'll wish him all the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last guy, the first one of this group, Florian Xhekaj in 25th place. I think it's right that he's above his brother. He's 3 years younger. He's expiring as well. Needs that entry-level contract, the entry-level contract is expiring, needs that next big boy contract. We're going to see what it is, because he's another one of these guys almost in no man's land where there isn't necessarily a spot yet, but you've shown a good amount. So it's going to come down to what occurs over the next few months, and obviously at training camp next year. He's not going to get a spot prior to that.
Yeah, I think also like the Dano trade eats up a roster spot for next year that maybe some people had kind of earmarked. It's going to be the Hunger Games again, like for the 11th through 14th roster spot. Like for the third year in a row, Brendan Gallagher is not on this list, understandably. If honestly he had kept up his pace from last year, I think he'd be in a very similar spot to Josh Anderson of having entered the list.
Yeah.
But Galley slowed down so much. We're not going to get into the Gallagher stuff. I don't know. It makes me too sad. I know it makes you too sad.
Yeah,
but
not worth it.
Galley's maybe still eating up a roster spot next year along with Josh Anderson. So it's going to be tough for these guys to get in. Beyond Laine, I don't really see anyone that I'm very confident in them leaving. There's one other guy that we're going to get to pretty soon that needs a contract, but it's going to be tough for Florian Xhekaj to make it on to the team next year as a full-time guy, as Beck is still trying to do it, as Roy is still trying to do it, as Vincent Zwer gets ready to come on. It's going to be tough. So again, this group, it's a bit of a shoulder shrug, and Florian's kind of like the captain of this group, because it's, with a lot of them, it's like, I feel like I should be wanting more, but also this is kind of all right, but also I'm a bit disappointed. But there's still hope, like they're still doing stuff. Anyways, it's a weird group, and I'm happy I put them all together. On to our next group, Tier 5. I already gave you the name. It's the everyday contributors. 20 to 24, reverse order. Alex Texier, 24, with his brand new spanking $2.5 million contract per year, 2 years. 23, Alex Carrier. 22, we already said it, Phil Danault. 21, Monty. And then 20, Jake Evans. So everyone here basically ages 29 to 32. Texier kind of ruins that. He's 26. But my point was here, these are guys who are prime, post-prime. We know who you are. You have an okay contract. You're going to be a UFA in the next couple years. You are, for the most part, it's kind of the same for tier 6, but like bottom 6, third pairing. But I trust you. Like I trust these guys more than I trust the guys in tier 6, even though they're older. But these guys are not in tier 4 because everybody in tier 4 is younger and has a longer development runway, and I'm more confident in. So that's where this kind of mushy middle comes in. Brian, where did you want to start with this group?
I think this group is very good. There's one exception to me, or one that could be elsewhere. I wonder if Texier could not be in the group above. He's a few years younger. He's kind of in between this group and the next one. The amount of skill that he's shown recently and the fact that he's been able to play on that top line and do some damage, that speaks to me. Now, is it just a glow that's occurring because of that top line? And we're gonna talk about that a few times with different players on this list. But is he just getting the Suzuki Caufield glow on him? I don't know. That line has worked better than any other line the Montreal Canadiens have put out. So
yeah, I mean, to me, it's just I haven't seen enough. And I'm trying not to have some of the recency bias that I've shown in years past. That we do these mid-season because I enjoy, first of all, if we did this in August or September, I just wouldn't remember how good everybody was. So I have to do this during the season, so I'm very fresh on how everyone's playing. But it does sometimes mean you're a prisoner of the moment. And maybe I was course correcting, like overcorrecting against that.
Well, that's fair, dude. You know what? Actually, that's very fair. A week and a half from now, Kirby Dach has played 3 games and is on the top line again, and Texier moves down to the third, and that first line still functions without him, and suddenly, okay. And the contract also tells you what management thinks of him. It's another show me deal. It's another, like, it's not as show me as, the rest of this year at 1 million. Good luck to you. It's 2 at 2.5. So we have enough faith in you to give you some money, just not a crazy amount, and not what a actual first line player would be making.
Yeah. So other guys on this list, Carey, I don't really feel like we need to talk about. He was 19th last year, is 23rd this year. It's fantastic. It's great. Danault, we kind of already mentioned. Evans and Monty. Both of these guys have pretty significant drops. Evans was 13th last year, down to 20th. Monty, 11th, down to 21st. So Monty down 10 spots. Let's go with Montembeault first, and then we can go back to Evans. Monty was by far the most volatile guy in making this list for obvious reasons over the last month or so. At times, he was in the tier 6. He was in 28, 27 when he was in the AHL. Obviously, the very beginning of this, when I just copied it over from last year, he was 11th, and he was slowly getting bumped down. So his range is almost 20 spots. So I eventually settled him into this tier right under Jake Evans at 21. And listen, it depends on and there's less bad contracts on the Canadiens, but for the most part, your contract can sometimes help or hurt you in this exercise. And Monty's is now slightly more in the helping, just because it's not that much money. This isn't a 5x4, 5x5 contract where you're worried for the next half a decade. You have to pay this guy and you don't know if he's an NHLer anymore.
Right.
I would say the jury's still out on Monty for the next few weeks. Like, I'm not as convinced as other people are that he figured it out. His 2 games in Laval, his little reset has helped. But it's been, look, the Noah Dobson was doing him no favors on Saturday night. So, some of those goals were definitely not on him. They were literally off of Dobson. But, so yeah, Monty was a confusing one for me. How do you find him in this tier?
He's probably about right. He belongs with Carrier, with Danault, with Evans in that he does contribute. Everyday contributors. It's the perfect name. And the ceiling has been reached.
Yeah.
Whereas other goalies on this list, including one that's beneath him, one that didn't even make it, actually. Forget beneath him, Volokin. That's a dude with a much higher ceiling than Montembeault has. But Montembeault, I believe he's an NHL goaltender. I've been trying to give him slack all year. I agree with you that it shouldn't be just a pendulum swinging back and forth. Oh, look, he's been winning games. He's back to normal. There's more to it than that, certainly. But the pendulum's swinging somewhere in the middle there, and wherever it lands, I guess we'll know. But it is tough to place him not knowing where that's going to end up. And then Jake Evans is kind of perfectly placed. He's got a much more reasonable contract and a long-term contract. Like, Jake Evans' contract, of any non-elite player making less than 8, which is the case for a bunch of our dudes, thank God. Other than those guys, when you look at the contracts of the Montreal Canadiens, his might be the one that's helping him the most. Because 2.85, under $3 million for what Jake Evans does for this team is so cheap. It's dirt cheap. I remember discussing with you when the contract was announced. We were on cloud nine. It's a great deal, and it makes sense that he's leading this group, Tier 5 everyday contributors, and he's 20th. But above him are a bunch of young dudes I'm ready to talk about. Do you have anything else on the everyday contributors?
No, I mean, it's a good segue into those guys because I think Evans dropping 7 spots doesn't really have anything to do with him. Maybe I slightly overvalued him last year, but I think really what it is basically everyone in Tier 4 had just another check mark on their year and being like, yep, they're still progressing. They're still doing it. Okay, time to bump them over the guy that, like, we know who Jake Evans is. Bottom 6 center, kill some penalties. Not the most offense, but you're going to get some pretty consistent hockey out of him. He's an NHLer. That group above him, a good chunk of them are guys that leapfrogged him because I feel way better about their projections now. So let's go up into Tier 4, which is the biggest tier. It's 8 players in this tier. Tier 4 is called There's a Star in Here, we just don't know where yet. So 12 to 19, in reverse order. 19, making his debut, Alex Zhuravsky. 18, not moving one single spot last year after much debate, Kirby Dach. 17, Owen Beck. 16, Zach Budzik. 15, Jakob Dobesh. 14, Adam Engstrom. 13, Alex Newhook. And number 12, Oliver Kapanen. So, ginormous group. In contrast to Tier 5, where everyone is basically, mid 26 to 32, here everyone's 18 to 24. And I think every name I just listed, either in the first half of this year, the second half of last year, or both, just hit that check mark of like, yeah, really good age 21 season, really good age 22 season. Right. For the case of Zhuravsky, great D+1 to start. You're on a decent KHL team. I still have some concerns, which is why he's not higher up in this tier. But it's just very much like check mark, check mark, check mark. Everyone's doing their job here and getting better and like gliding towards their projection. I think no one more than Owen Beck, who is like, he was high floor, low ceiling, and it's fully playing out in front of our eyes. In this group, Brian, where do you want to start?
I want to start with Zhuravsky and ask you, how come the second best point scoring, on pace for the best point scoring 18-year-old KHL season, as poorly as I just worded that, isn't higher?
So it's a great question. And he's a tough one to spot because like the production has been there. I still see like a super duper lanky guy who just has like, doesn't have Demidov hands, but he has some pretty damn good hands and good puck handling skills. Anytime I see like clips or highlights of him, like extended ones, there's just no physicality in his game and there's none being reciprocated from the other team. And like, that's just not how the NHL works. Now, again, he's 18 for like another month and a half. So or maybe not that long. He's, I think, a February birthday. Tons of time to grow into it. He has one more year on the contract, so we're probably not going to see him next season either. There's a lot of time to wait here, but there's a reason he was an early second round pick. Having said that, yeah, I can see you wanting to put him up a bit more based on that production. I just think the concerns from the draft process are still there, but offensively, he's ticking all the check marks and check boxes so far.
That's very fair. So the way I view it sort of is Zhuravsky belongs with Kapanen and Newhook at the top, just in terms of ceiling. Because Alex Newhook, we've seen what his ceiling is, and Kapanen, we're seeing it now, and he's another one of those guys that has that glow on him from Slavkovsky and Demidov, maybe the brightest glow of anybody on this team in terms of getting help from elsewhere, and also being on when Hutson's on a lot of the time. Like, don't doubt that doesn't help a ton. So that's kind of compelling. Kirby Dach going from 3rd to 18th and then sticking right there at 18th is kind of cool. Owen Beck, it's so true when you look at the numbers too of just that middling guy, 18th to 16th to 17th. Like he's just sticking around. He has just the same potential that he did. Bottom 6 center who's just super, super, super smart. And then Budzik is interesting because at the beginning you used him as an example of like, well, he was traded for Mailloux, so that's his value. I do think the Habs won that trade, so maybe it's Mailloux plus 10% or whatever it is. But we do have a real, value for him at Mailloux. And so when you look at these other players, I do wonder if Owen Beck would get you more than Mailloux. I do think Kirby Dach would get you more than Mailloux. I think Zhuravsky would absolutely get you more than Mailloux. So it's Mailloux plus a bit in terms of value for Budzik. And again, my only gripe, I would have Żurawski way up there, along with Newhook and Kapanen. But beyond that, I think it makes a lot of sense. Engstrom being in here, still really solid, going from 26th to 25th. Now he's shown it in the NHL, and his stuff works there. 14th.
So I acknowledge my Adam Engstrom bias. If that is someone yelling at their podcaster right now, I hear you. It's okay. You're wrong. I'm right. On the Kirby Dach front, it's the contract that, if anything, that drops him a couple spots because he needs a new one. So in terms of value, like that is also like prisoner of the moment. Like 2 weeks from now, this might be silly because Kirby Dach will have played 2 weeks at wing with Caufield and Suzuki, which is where he's practicing on Monday morning. So we'll see. And he might just be like, he's back to being the winger. And look, him as a winger versus him as a center is a slightly different projection. But if he complements those guys like we think he definitely can, then that goes up. But then it's the contract at that point. Like the contract to him really, like I feel better with Kirby Dach this time around than last year. But the contract hurts him. Beck versus Bolduc, I hear you. Bolduc still almost has a 20-goal season to his name, whereas Beck still has very little proven at the NHL level. Expected. There's a 2-year, there's a year gap in their developments, a 21 draft pick versus a 22 draft pick. It's all in and around there. Dobish is the lost guy. This is a gigantic group. This is basically all the young guys that aren't stars, really.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I just couldn't break them apart. Kapanen got the tiebreaker because he's doing it. He is the second line center. And Demidov and Slav are there, and we're going to get to those guys. Don't you worry. But he's still there. So he deserves it for this time being. Alex Newhook breaks my heart. He was having such a great year. So I kept him really high up. There's one more year on the contract for the Canadiens to be able to bounce back from it. But hey, look, this is a fun group. Like, truthfully, 2 years ago, this group would have been 7 through 12 or 7 through 14. There's just so much more talent now. Same goes for Jake Evans. Like, Jake Evans dropped 7 spots. Or actually, you know what a good one is? Samuel Montembeault 2 years ago was 8th. And I don't think that was an overreaction. I just think that's where the Habs were in terms of their team. Monty's had a bumpy year, but even if Monty wasn't bumpy, maybe he's 18th or 19th. Like, I don't know if he breaks over Żurawski or Dach. So
no, I wouldn't have him. No,
it shows just how much stronger the talent pool is in the organization. One note, and this will help us go into tier 3. The top 14, Brian, is made up of 5 defensemen, and that to me indicates an organizational strength. And that leads us to tier 3. It's the smallest one. After going with the biggest tier, we have the smallest tier, just 2 players. Tier 3 is called Do We Have a Surplus? It is Mike Matheson at number 11 and Caden Gooley dropping out of tier 2 at number 10. So Gooley has a bit of a drop, went from 6th down to 10th. He actually was 4th 2 years ago. Matheson didn't really move. 12th last year, 11th this year. He has his new contract. Gooley has his contract, which he had this time around last year, that are pretty darn similar.
Yep.
And I think a lot of us have had the discussion of like, well, you just need one of Matheson or Gooley to work at this point. Gooley's going to be playing third pairing minutes for the foreseeable future. At what point does that flip and it becomes Matheson on the third pairing? Is there a hedge in terms of health for Gooley? What do you think of this tier? And is this right to still have Caden Gooley? Like I think Matheson's fine in this area. I don't think he deserves to be above the other guys. We didn't get to Reinbacher yet. I know you had some gripes on Reinbacher last year being a bit too high. Are these guys in there okay? Like, does this make sense to have these two in this tier and not have Gooley with the tier 2 guys or Matheson with the tier 4 guys or vice versa?
Yeah, I think this is right. Gooley and Matheson they've both proven more and are better players at this very moment than anyone in tier 4. Newhook being maybe the one exception, and Dach has shown flashes. But in terms of what they've proven, Gooley and Matheson are there. Gooley's injury history hurts him. Matheson's age hurts him. Both of their contracts, I think, are good. Not amazing, certainly not bad. $5.5 million for each of them. Caden Gooley's got 5 years. Mike Matheson has 6 years. It's half a dozen of one, 6 of the other in terms of value, I think. And you're right to have Gooley just a hair above Matheson here. The Reinbacher one, I'm not going to fight on this year. You had mentioned him, so I'll strip away the facade for about 10 seconds here. He belongs in the one above.
Okay.
His draft pedigree, his potential, his right-handedness allow him to be there. If he was a left-handed player, he'd be in tier 3 with Gooley and Matheson as a surplus guy. But he's not.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, not to break into tier 2 too soon, but Reinbacher's 9th. So we're bringing him up because he's the very next guy on the list, right above Caden Gooley, who's dropped. Look, it's a bit of also like recognizing Caden Gooley and what's like when you get injured this often, it's going to affect your perception, your standing in the organization. And he's gone from 4th to 6th to 10th, which still to us indicates that, like, I think, again, we've had the Gouley discussion of, like, from outsiders, I think there's a perception that, like, Caden Gouley's a depth guy. He's like a second or third pairing defenseman. And truthfully, if it wasn't for all the injuries, we would have had a much clearer indication if he could still be a top pairing guy. But that ship is slowly sailing away, and he's more likely settling into a second pairing role. It just because, like, it's also like not playing on the left as much, and that's why, like, he's on the third pairing. But if he's on the left on the third pairing, he's actually going to be a killer. And it's still something to track. It's weird, again, like, we're talking about a guy who's a third pairing player on this team right now, but he's 10th overall. So which means we still kind of see the growth potential and the opportunities. There's just so many defensemen and not that many spots.
Definitely. And there's something to be said too for if Caden Gouley is your shutdown left-handed defenseman on the third pairing, holy crap, you're doing something right with your decor.
Yeah. And that brings us to the title of the tier. Do you have a surplus? And that's not something we're answering right now, but I think we're identifying the players who might be the surplus. We'll see.
Look, by the off season, this question will be answered, I believe. And not necessarily with one of these two names, but if Struble and Jackeye both were out the door, or something else weird happened where we lost a couple of left-handed defensemen, would I be surprised? No, not at all.
We talked about Pickford. He's coming through the ranks. Yeah. There's Angstrom there already. Like, that's Struble. That's the Struble and Jackeye Arbor stuff where it's like you have your time, or we gotta the claw and the meter is running. We're gonna go to the next guy eventually if they can't just fully lock down a spot. Anyways, we'll see. Go to tier 2. Tier 2 is titled Sure, but he's like 90% untouchable. So from 6 to 9 in reverse order: Ryan Bacher at 9th, Michael Hage number 8, Noah Dobson 7th, and for a second straight year outside the first tier, Cole Caufield is at number 6. So you gave me some grief last year. Why was Caufield not tier 1? I'm doing it again. And he's also fallen a couple spots. He's gone from 4th to 6th. Actually gone from 2nd to 4th to 6th.
Yes.
What are your first thoughts on this tier?
So let me tackle Caufield first. One of the guys who, because someone has to pass you for you to drop. That's how it works. Slavkovsky passed Caufield. We haven't mentioned him yet. He's in the first tier, right? That one makes total sense to me. The other guy who passed him does not. I will say Jacob Fowler should be in tier 2 with these guys and should be below Caufield, maybe Dobson, maybe even Michael Hage. Am I crazy?
Okay. So yeah, let's keep those other guys away for now, because I think there's a fun discussion and once you get to the top 4. Fowler's the right guy to identify. He's 5th. If we want to break that for a bit, Fowler's the guy just above. I put him in tier 1. The thing with Caufield and Dobson, I actually feel like they're mirror images of each other. Like, Dobson is the defenseman version of Caufield, and Caufield is the forward version of Dobson in terms of, I know what they are. They are one level below, like, superstar. Caufield's going to be a 35 goal scorer for like 10 years. And he might have, you know what? He'll throw a 50 goal season in at some point. He'll have one 52 goal season. But for the most part, I think Caufield's going to be 33, 37, 35, 38, 41, 32, 27, 52. Like, it's going to be that, I think, weaving around. Same goes for Noah Dobson, where I think, like, we had, from what we anticipated from when he came over from the Islanders, like 26 minutes a night, all this and that. He's been a second power play guy. He has more or less been demoted to penalty kill too. And I mean, he's still playing like 2 minutes on the penalty kill. Just as Caden Gouley comes back, like, poor Mike Matheson's going to finally have a breather on the penalty kill. We have not actually talked about it that much, but Matheson playing like 2 straight minutes on the penalty kill is bananas. And it's purely because St. Louis is like, I don't trust Arbor, I don't trust Jaden, and Lane's too important. So I thought that was kind of funny that he was just double shifting defensemen. So I find those guys really similar. So that was more the thing to me. I'm like, well, if I include Caufield in the top tier, we'll get to the Fowler part when you get the Fowler. But if I'm including Caufield in the top tier, I don't know if I have much of a leg to stand on if that Dobson can also not be in the top tier. Does that make any sense?
I think that's perfectly fair. They belong next to each other. Caufield's slightly above Dobson. They're in the perfect location. Nothing wrong with that. And so what I might be advocating here, which has happened 2 or 3 times in this discussion, is maybe creating a new tier. I've never said that because you'll end up with 15 tiers if we did it my way, but which you just can't do. But like, I don't know. They're like, I want to bring the discussion back to, like, if a team were to trade for these guys, what would be the offer for Caufield versus Fowler? And when I think of Fowler, what I think of is the Askarov trade. You think of another high-end goaltender. And Askarov netted, if I remember correctly, Magnus Krona, who's just a prospect goal. Not even a pro. I think he's 25 or 26 at this point. Like the clock's ticking with him, and he may never pan out. That was just a goalie in the organization they got, and then they got a conditional first and a third, and then what went back was like a couple little pieces here and there. So, but those were the main pieces. I think Cole Caufield gets you that times 3 if you were to trade him. So the argument I assume is that, well, yeah, but they had to move. Nashville had to move Askarov because they had their guy. They have Saros, so they're not going to use him. And he requested a trade, and so you lose. But you don't lose like 200% of your value, is what I'm saying. Like I think Caufield, Dobson, even Michael Hage as like a potential centerman might net you more value than Jacob Fowler would.
Okay, so a couple things there. One is this exercise does fall apart a little bit when we include goalies, just because we've said this. We've had this discussion last year. The goalie market's just not that strong. It's ever. But I don't want that to kind of, in terms of like the spirit of the exercise, to like,
right?
Because obviously, like, you know what I mean. Like Dobish is not worth more than Kirby Dach, right? It's because he's a goalie. But if that equivalent level was a skater, a forward, or a defenseman, he'd be above it. That's where this exercise kind of breaks apart.
Right.
I do think Fowler would have, in the hypothetical, Fowler has more value than Hage and Reinbacher. I don't think it's close, really.
Okay. So that I will gladly accept. It's Caufield and Dobson to me that was the big flashing light. Yeah. Hage and Reinbacher and Fowler to me, and they have been basically the entire time. Well, not Fowler his first year, but last year it was 987. The year prior 7. Michael Hage was on draft. We could just talk about last year, 7-8-9 for these three guys, and Fowler was above them. It was Fowler, then Reinbacher, then Hage. So Hage bursts out and gets ahead of Reinbacher, which makes total sense. You could totally convince me Fowler's still ahead of them. I think those three guys is almost a tier, but totally maybe I digress too much.
No, that makes complete sense. I agree. Yeah, Caufield, we literally saw what Noah Dobson was worth, and everyone was like, yeah, fair trade. Reinbacher, just to touch on him briefly, he's technically dropped every year. He's gone from 7th to 8th to 9th, but much in the way of like Jake Evans was a much more dramatic drop. But it's very much the same where I'm like, I actually feel more certain about Reinbacher now than I did 12 months ago.
Right.
But it just, you get past. If you get past, you get past. It doesn't mean you got worse. It just means like Noah Dobson got traded onto the same organization as you did.
Yeah.
And
Demidov got drafted. Sorry, Reinbacher.
Yeah, like it happens. And like Michael Hage was one of, I don't care what they said, but Michael Hage was one of Canada's 2 or 3 best players at the World Juniors. Like those things can happen and you still be really good.
Yeah.
And so I'm still keeping all my Reinbacher stock. We never let go of it, you or I. It's still all there. Yeah,
if nothing else, sorry to cut you off. If nothing else, what this is kind of this exercise is exhibiting is just how much elite talent has been imbued into the top that everybody gets pushed down.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm hearing your arguments for Caufield and Dobson. I won't change it because I'm stubborn. But that's also not the point of the exercise. The point of the exercise is not to reorganize.
It's a discussion. Yeah,
it's a discussion.
The point is have a talk.
So let's go. Tier 1, game time, titled, You'll Have to Pry 'Em From Our Cold Dead Hands.
From our cold dead hands.
So listen, Fowler is still there. He's at the bottom of the tier at 5th. It's fine. We've already talked about him. 4-1. Now there are discussions to be had, I will say. 4 is Juraj Slafkovsky, 3 is Nick Suzuki, 2 is Lane Hutson, 1 is Ivan Demidov. Last year, we had Demidov debuting at 1. Suzuki had been dethroned, but he was still 2 over Hutson at 3. And you and I actually had probably about 30 to 45 second discussion on, hey, wait a second. Should Hutson be over Suzuki? And I kind of brushed you off, and like I usually do. And this year, again, draft 1 of this, I still had Suzuki at 2. And like the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, that's just not a good take anymore. Hutson has to be above Nick Suzuki. And again, it has nothing to do with Nick. Nick is going to be an Olympian. He's going to have a 90-point season. He's great. So let's start there. Is that the right change to make? Because that's the biggest change in this tier. Is Hutson flipping off Nick Suzuki. Jumping over Nick to get to number 2. We can get if he should be number 1 in the second. But Is that the right call?
It is absolutely the right call. Unquestionably so. Nick's leadership, his contract, his ability to be both a top 10 offensive center and a top 10 defensive center in this league. I would argue maybe top 5 defensive center in this league if you count the elite players. He's an all-around tremendous player, but what Lane Hutson is doing currently is one of 3 guys. It's Makar, it's Quinn Hughes, and it's Lane Hutson. If we were to name all of the centers that are ahead of Nick Suzuki, you'd see very quickly. Like, we don't have to go through the exercise, but I said he was 10th. Nick Suzuki, I believe, is 9th in terms of points right now among those guys. So just in terms of points, I know that's only one thing, and then he probably jumps over a few of them in terms of his defensive acumen and everything else he brings to the table and just how much of a good leader. My dad sent me something. Actually, I kind of want to quote it if you'll permit me here. I'm just going to pull it up on my phone. He sent me something about Suzuki, just watching him the other night. He said, the more I watch Suzuki, the more his leadership reminds me of Bob Gainey. Just the demeanor that he exhibits. He is certainly not the same style of player, but I love the quiet way he leads. And my dad saw, Bob Gainey's career. He knows what he's talking about. He's a Habs fan like I am, and I think he's dead on the money. So the leadership of Nick Suzuki and all these other things that he brings to the table are so valuable. And even with all that, like, Hutson edges him out just by being a top 3, maybe 5 for the time being talent. Like, Matthew Schaefer's coming, and Werenski's still there. Like, there's still guys.
That's the name.
But
it's Werenski was the one guy I was going to object and kind of throw him
totally
in
fair. He's a little older, so I'm kind of categorizing Hutson with the young guys. But Werenski's a killer, and part of the reason Hudson's not on Team USA also by extension of that. I'll leave it at that, because if I talk anymore, I'm going to start trying to put him above Demidov. But let's save that.
Save it. So Hutson 6th, up to 3rd, up to 2nd. He's a supernova. Like, I continue to underestimate how damn good he's going to be, and then the next night, he does 7 new things, and I'm like, damn, did not know you had that in your game. It's also like there is an age difference. Obviously, we still see like a lot of potential there for Hutson. The incredible reliability and consistency of Suzuki is to not be underlooked. That his bad games are much better than a Hutson bad game. But again, Hudson's 21. We're going to see what a Hutson bad game is at 24. It's going to be way different.
Yep.
So that's it.
And Hudson's closer to your net when he makes mistakes, just by being a defenseman.
Of course.
So you see them more readily too.
So Suzuki's square in the middle there at 3. Do you want to go down to 4 and then finish with what might be a discussion? Okay. So
yes,
Slav at 4.
Which I wish we had 40 minutes to discuss these 3-4 guys. But anyway, Slavkovsky at 4 moves up 1 spot. I think this is right. And you could tempt me in creating a discussion between he and Suzuki, but I think there is a pretty stark line between Suzuki and Slavkovsky still, and that might dissipate by next year. Maybe we'll be talking about Suzuki dropping 1 more spot, going from 1 to 2 to 3 to then 4, and not because of Suzuki, but just because 1 more dude passed him. And this previous first overall pick is blossoming into what we all believed he could be, or at least the believers did, you and I, Jordan, and many other Habs fans. So I don't think that there's a more kind of perfect placement of a guy in terms of just above Caufield and Dobson and just below Suzuki. Like Slavkovsky, I don't think we have to debate where he is. He's obviously got a higher ceiling than Caufield and Dobson, and he's maybe just not all around as talented as Suzuki. When you look at the on-ice expected goals differential in the NHL this year, Nick Suzuki is 7th in the entire league. It's McKinnon, McDavid, Kucherov, Jason Robertson, Martin Necas, Tomas Hertl, and then Nick Suzuki. And then Mitch Marner is 8th, which I didn't think he was playing that well in Vegas, but anyway. And then it's Cole Caufield, 9th. So a little love to Cole Caufield. To find Slavkovsky, you do have to scroll down a while. 50th in the league. Not too shabby. Still very, very good. And making Kapanen look great every night. Driving well with Demidov every night. Slavkovsky has turned into the unicorn.
Yeah. One interesting way to look at it is Slav, as of recording, has 40 points in 49 games. Nick Suzuki's D+4. He had 41 points in 56 games. So it's pretty neck and neck.
It's the center boost, I think.
I was going to bring that up. But from an offensive production standpoint, I think Slav is just like if he had a stronger start to the year, which I think this year has been a lot less about like not in his best shape and just bad puck luck.
Yeah.
And then just he bounced around for a minute before fully settling in with Kapanen and Demidov. If not for that, 30 goals this year, I think would have been a given. It's still not out of the question, but a 60-point season with 30 goals is on the table at this point. And at that point, offensively, he's outproducing 21-year-old version of Nick Suzuki. Suzuki brings, of course, so much more from a defensive standpoint, from a center standpoint. But it's like he's starting to push Nick. And 12 months from now, Nick Suzuki could be on a 100-point pace. He could be Lady Byng finalists, top 5 in Selke voting, and we're going to be here scratching our chins being like, should Slafkovsky jump him? Because I think that's very much going to be in play, the way things are going. And that's great.
I mean, eventually we might be doing these, and when we get to like 6 and up, we might just go, they're all great. Tier 1, they're all great. We're not even ranking them. Just, they're good, okay? We're done with this. Because you almost feel bad having Slafkovsky be 4th. How many organizations around the league that are in the midst of a rebuild the way the Canadiens are would have him like 1st or 2nd? Probably a bunch. So it's really impressive what he's doing.
It's what's really telling is that last year and the year before that he was 5th, and he is so much better now. And it's not like he's like, we're comparing age 27 to age 21. No, it's 12 months later, and he is so much better. Okay.
And he's at 19 goals. How many games did it take him to score 20 goals last season and the season prior? The entire year. It was right down to the wire, man. We were watching the game together, and he finally did it, like last game of the year. He's at 19 right now. Next game, Tuesday night, he could score his 20th and already be there in 50 games. So like that 30 goal thing and the 60-point thing is absolutely in play. Not a given, as you said, but should we expect it at this point? I don't think it would be bad to.
No, I mean, it's what he's done in these last 25, 30 games is just be an incredibly consistent power forward play driver. And like, I made a comment, and after, I swear we're going to do the Demidov stuff right after this. I made a comment 15 games into the season or so about like, I think I came up with a list of, I have 20 goals, 200 hits. That's kind of the group, or 30 goals and 200 hits. How many guys do that? That's what I want Slav to do. From a hits per game standpoint, Slav is down year over year, but I think that's because he's being asked to play a slightly different role. Well, not, I think he definitely is compared to this when he was on the Suzuki line versus the Kapanen line. And it's like, oh, he's better at this actually. So like he'll still throw around, like maybe get 140, 150 hits, maybe 160, somewhere in that range. It's cool. He just has the puck more. That's all. Like,
I think honestly, we traded our 30 and 200 guy to a certain team for Noah Dobson. I think it was Heineman, but Slafkovsky is miles above him.
Okay, let's finish with the Thunderdome. Let's do it.
Jeez.
So Demidov back-to-back first. Listen, this is hilarious. He is on pace for like a 60 to 70 point season. He is maybe the 6th best player on the team. And we're all just like, yep, that's what we thought. Like, he is the most hyped prospect. We have hyped the crap out of prospects over the past 30 years. Let's not all forget Guillaume Latendresse's D+1 and D+2. Of course, Hutson was something, but Hutson, again, from a hype perspective, not close. Slafkovsky, not close.
No.
Suzuki, nothing. Caufield had hype, but not this. And then the way he entered last year with his goals, again, a goal against Chicago in the assist, and the playoffs, he was really good. And he has just literally done everything we thought he could do. And no doubt, no huge dry spell, no not keeping up with the physicality, no getting tired from an 82-game schedule pace. Second line all year, power play 1, took his time, got there. They're the best they've been in a decade plus, and I guarantee you, it's him and Hutson kind of running the show there. We're not taking him for granted. That's definitely not happening. But it's very much like the stars of this season are going to be Lane Hutson, Uri Slafkovsky, Nick Suzuki, Cole Caufield, Noah Dobson, Mike Matheson. You got to go a bit down the list before, from an unbiased perspective, you get to Demidov. Again, 6th or 7th best guy on the team probably this year. But he's 19 and he's just going to put up, 17 goals and 50 assists? And we're all just gonna sit around and be like, "That was cool. That was awesome, man. Good job."
That's what I expected, pretty much. Yeah. All right, go do it again.
Yeah.
It's. I don't know. I haven't had this feeling about a player before, and I think you said it best in that 30 years have gone by and a player has not been hyped to this degree, and no player has deserved this amount of hype either. Carey Price potentially being the one exception, also drafted at 5th overall. So. Yes, he's in that category. Now, I have a question for you, and it's the reason that Lane Hutson, to me, peaks over Demidov's head just a tad. Not in actual height, as we all know, but in the ranking here. What is more valuable? A guy who is unsigned that a general manager trading for them would then have to, they maintain the ability to negotiate with them and sign them to whatever they want, but the player still has some control, versus a player who's signed a stupidly cheap deal like Lane Hutson has. So Ivan Demidov, Lane Hutson, in terms of ceilings, I think are actually quite similar. Both of them are going to be top 3, top 5 at their position in their primes. Ivan Demidov, top-end winger. Lane Hutson, top-end offensive defenseman. Like, do you agree with that assessment, first of all?
Yeah, it's Kaprizov and Hughes, who, if they were on the same team,
who happen to be on the
they are. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, true.
That's what it is.
Neat.
That's the Kucherov gets thrown around, but I really do think it's Kaprizov. So it's Kaprizov and Hughes. That's the projections. They're doing everything they can to make it. In terms of what's more valuable, purely from that, the contract I know what you're getting into. Purely from that standpoint, it's really close, but I do think Quinn Hughes would have more value than Kirill Kaprizov.
Okay.
From a contract standpoint, it's interesting. Because we don't know what the Demidov contract is going to be. I presume it's not going to be far from ironically, the Lane Hutson contract.
Yeah.
Now I believe it'll have to be a year shorter because I think it's not able to be the 8 year.
Yes.
It'll have to be the 7 year. And actually, it's kind of nice that Matthew Schaefer's out here just destroying everything in sight and likely going to win the Calder. Not from like a contract suppression standpoint, just from a hype standpoint. It'll again just Demidov a little bit in the shadow, a little bit to the side. So maybe that's what's affecting some of our opinion on it. Of like Demidov is just like again quietly stick handling his way to 65 points, second or third in Calder voting. If I guess Jesper Wallstedt's kind of slowed down. We're talking too much about the Minnesota Wild. I see what you're trying to say. That maybe Lane Hutson might hold a pinch more value over it, but again, it really comes down to my like. I feel like I'm always 2 steps behind on the Lane Hutson hype train. That's not a good analogy, but you know what I mean, right? I'm always a little bit behind, and part of it is just apprehension and being. Well,
you're trying to mitigate. You're trying to mitigate, like, or find a happy medium maybe between what have they done for me lately, what did they do in the past, what are they going to do? Like, it's not an easy conversation because immersed in all of this is two different. Their ages are basically the same, a year apart, so that helps. 2 draft years apart, so that definitely helps, right? But the contracts are completely different. One is signed, the other isn't. One's a forward, one's a defenseman. They're both offensive guys, so it's many different. Like, you're comparing apples to oranges that look like bananas. So it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. Again, I might have Hutson above Demidov. You might have Demidov above Hutson. But what we're really trying to say is, man, are we lucky?
We're lucky because 2 years ago we were like, damn, Suzuki and Caufield, 1 and 2. Look at us. We're going to kill everyone in sight. And now we're like, actually, it's Demidov and Hutson as 1 and 2. And it's not because Caufield and Suzuki have fallen off a cliff. In fact, they've both gotten way better. It's just very interesting that the kind of the center point, the focal point of the like progression of this franchise has shifted convincingly from Suzuki Caufield to Demidov Hutson. And it's not like we've replaced you. This isn't a Toy Story plot line. Although I know you're excited for Toy Story 5 later this year. We can one day tell the story of Brian watching Toy Story 3. Let that settle.
I'm more excited for Zootopia 2.
You haven't seen it?
My daughter.
Let's not get into it.
No, my daughter loves Zootopia 1, and we can't wait for 2.
Great.
So excited.
So, point is.
Yeah.
That
what were we talking about?
It's just.
Oh, yeah, the Habs.
I think it's just like you slowly come to the realization that this is Demidov and Hutson leading the charge with Suzuki and Caufield. And it's just, that's like, it's a bit of a trip to like think about that and how it's gone over the years. Because basically from 2022 to 2024, those 3 seasons, it was like, those are the guys. And then the last 2 years, it's like, wait a second. Hold on now. And like Slav never really entered the discussion as the top guy. And then all of a sudden it's actually going to be Hutson and Demidov. And we see them on the power play doing their thing and they're wicked. And it just, to bring this all to a close, like, holy moly. Again, we did this 2 years ago and you look at this franchise year over year, and that's the point of the exercise, to see how much stronger it is. And it's like Caden Gooley's now 10th. Oliver Kapanen is 12th. Adam Ekstrom is 14th. Those 3 guys would have been 5th, 6th, and 7th 2 years ago. I mean,
Yeah.
Kaiden Guhle literally was 4th, I believe.
Yeah, Monty was 8th.
Monty was 8th. We had,
That's
I think,
nuts.
Sean Monahan, I think, was 10th or 11th. Like, it was wild to now you look at it and you're like, oh, Michael Hage, who might be the second best center in the organization. Yeah, he's 8th. What? He should have been like Kirby Dach 2 years ago was 3rd. And he had 20 good games at center.
Like if Michael Hage hits his potential and then some, maybe he'll enter the top 5. That's just how ironclad and solid these guys are. Maybe. You'd have to get above one of the best power forwards in the game, one of the best 200-foot centers in the game, one of the best offensive Ds, one of the best scoring, assisting wingers, and potentially an all-star goalie.
Yeah, and there's also the chance that in 2 years from now, Jacob Fowler's 3rd. And you're like, yeah, it's actually Fowler's the 3rd guy in the list somehow because he becomes 31 reincarnate.
Okay, all right. I was literally about to say, he's not Carey Price, right? But okay.
Hey, I
Let's
said
have that
3rd,
discussion
not
another
1st.
time.
Can you imagine how
Yeah, I
boring
guess.
this would have been for 8 years with Price? It would have been like, yeah, Carey's 1st again, guys. Don't worry about it.
Carey's 1st. Who's 2nd? Who gives a crap? It's Carey's
There's no
show,
tier
man.
2. It's just Price in tier
No.
1, no one in tier 2, Brendan Gallagher in tier 3 by himself. Okay, well, look.
Which tells you they should have sparked a rebuild. All right, let's get into this now. No, please cut
we're
me
not
off.
we can talk about the 2017 summer another day. Okay, so we'll wrap it there. This has been a boatload of fun. Hopefully you're still here to listen. And at some points have disagreed with me and disagreed with Brian, and we're going to do this exercise all over again in 12 months. So until then, you can follow us on social media at HabsLandPod. Leave reviews on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And until next Monday, go Habs.